Well, good morning and welcome to another week on my allotment. And the shots you've just seen were taken earlier in the week. They certainly weren't taken today. Got up here nice and early again. Forgot the camera, so luckily it's only 7 minutes from allotment to home, so I had to go back and get it. Anyway, I'm here now. Yes, the weather's taken a dip, as it always does this time of the year. You can never rely on it, although I believe the warm weather is returning next week. But it's a really busy time on the allotment. Lots of the seedlings I'm growing are maturing and becoming reasonable sized plants. So it's a case of transferring and bringing up here, and I'll show you in a second that earlier in the week I planted the alderman peas, and they're the ones who grow to 6 foot high, hopefully. Yeah, planted the peas. I did my first leeks. I put my first leeks in the ground. They're a little bit thin, and they're meant to be sort of pencil size is the recommended moment to plant them out, but as always I've gone a little bit early. So yeah, I started to get some stuff in the ground on the allotment, which is always a lovely moment in the year. And the big thing today, as boring as it is very, very necessary, is hoeing. Just as the vegetables are starting to grow, so are the weeds. And some of these plots that I mulched back in the autumn and have laid beautifully bare of any vegetation over the winter, the little weed seedlings that are in that mulch are now starting to grow, and all these lovely brown beds are starting to show a hint of green. So as with all weeds, the time to get them is early on. So today the hoe comes out, and I will probably go around each and every bed, as long as that takes, and just chop the heads off them. Because of course yesterday and Friday evening we had a really good soak of rain, which was desperately needed, amazing to say, and it's really done the job. It's soaked the ground through, so I shan't be watering today, which is a relief. But of course that will also promote the growth of the weeds. So today's a good day to get all those weed heads chopped off. I'm hoping I might get a few more plants out in the ground as well. So as always, I have all day up here. I'm going to have a cup of tea first, take my time, enjoy the moment, and get the hoe out and start work. Welcome along. I'd like to do something slightly different, and I hope you'll bear with me. It'll take 3 or 4 minutes. I buy, or my wife buys for me, the Kitchen Garden magazine occasionally, and this one is maize. And you know, sometimes there's stuff in here about fennel and things like that, and I'm not interested, and you skip by it. But I've come across an article. It's by a chap called Stephen Nightingale, and it just resonated with me, and it'll only take a few minutes, so you know, bear with me, and I think you'll find this interesting. It was during the Dark War years that rationing was introduced into Britain. Before the war, 70% of all British food was imported, and the German U-boat blockade was threatening to stop our merchant shipping, thus threatening the home front with starvation. In October 1939, the hugely successful Dig for Victory campaign was launched by the British government, calling for every man and woman in Britain to keep an allotment. Lawns and flower beds were turned into vegetable plots, and this even included golf courses, parks, and the moat around the Tower of London. It wasn't until 1954 that rationing stopped, but most still continued to grow their own vegetables in their back gardens. Like most families, my father would grow all his own vegetables, enough to keep our family of 5 supplied right through the years. And I remember my dad doing the same. He didn't supply all our vegetables, but he certainly made a concerted effort to grow as many as possible. It was just the way they were brought up. The 1960s saw the country prospering again, with wages starting to rise, giving families more money to spend. This, of course, gave rise to the new shops called supermarkets. People found they had enough money in their pockets to get the weekly shop at these large new stores, including their weekly vegetables. A few people, like my father, still carried on with their allotments, but many found it easier to give up the digging, get in the car and drive to the supermarket. As the supermarkets grew, so did the need for them, and to make bigger and bigger profits, resulting in all sorts of marketing enticements. New customers who may never have grown their own vegetables are enticed by all the so-called fresh vegetables, little realising that most of them had been sprayed many times before they actually get to the shelves. This is where the history of it is interesting, but this particularly grabbed me. Recent research by the Soil Association reveals that some vegetables may contain chemical cocktails. Farmers are increasingly becoming dependent on chemicals. A potato can be doused in 30 different chemicals, before it gets to your plate. The Soil Association research, based on 4 decades of government data, has thrown up all sorts of worrying facts. For example, a leek or onion bought in 2014 was treated with 32.6 active ingredients on average, compared to 1.8 in 1974. Even if this proved not to be harmful to your health, well, how can it not be? Then the practice of packing perfectly cleaned and graded vegetables in black plastic trays covered with plastic film is bound to be extremely harmful to the environment. Then they are taken to the checkout to be put in plastic carrier bags to bring home. Every day, around 8 million pieces of plastic pollution finds its way into our oceans. There may now be about 5.25 trillion microplastic pieces floating in the open ocean, weighing up to 269,000 tonnes. Plastics consistently make up 60 to 90% of all debris studied. Production of plastic increased from 2.3 million tonnes in 1950 to 448 million tonnes by 2015. Every year about 8 million tonnes of plastic escapes into the oceans. Nearly there. A lot has changed in the last 80 years since the Digging for Victory campaign, not least the digital age we are now living in. This has helped to make us all more aware of the importance of keeping healthy. There are now probably almost as many gyms as there are allotment sites. It is a common sight in our parks and seafronts to see a constant stream of joggers. One of the most important elements of keeping fit is keeping to a healthy diet. My daughter said recently, and it really grabbed me, she said, you can't out-train an unhealthy diet. I thought that was really good. Keeping fit is keeping to a healthy diet, and it has proved that a Mediterranean diet is by far the most effective way to keep healthy. The crazy thing is, when you visit Mediterranean countries, nearly all the locals grow their own vegetables, either in their back gardens or a little plot on the hillside. I can't imagine what the Spanish, Greeks and Italians think when they visit England and see our neatly packed veg sold in plastic containers, when most of theirs is grown on their own plot, or what they can't grow they can buy from the local market with not a plastic bag in sight. I remember asking a friend who lived on Corfu, do the locals ever go to the gym? No, he replied, they are too tired after tending their plots. I have been growing vegetables all my life, first by starting to help my father when I was able to walk down to his allotment, and for the past 50 years having my own plot. If you have never experienced the pleasure of digging your first root of potatoes, picking your first crop of peas of the season, cooking and eating them all within a few hours, you are missing something. The smell of the freshly picked tomatoes and popping them straight into your mouth. It is a completely different taste to the ones sold in plastic from your local supermarket. I find it incomprehensible in this day and age, when we are so aware of the benefits of keeping fit and healthy, that we still insist on eating vegetables which have been sprayed goodness knows how many times before we put them in our mouths, and to make matters worse, we buy them in plastic containers which are then thrown away to pollute our oceans and kill off our marine life. Surely it has to be time for us to follow our forebears and start digging for victory for the sake of our health. Now, that only took 3 or 4 minutes, but that one article encapsulates everything I've been trying to say on this channel. It makes absolutely no sense to me, and the more wealth we've got, the worse our health has become. And this man outlines it in this wonderful article with, I always like an article with pictures. Yeah, Stephen Nightingale. Well done, Stephen. That was a wonderful article. I really enjoyed it, and I hope it made a bit of sense to you. I mean, if you're watching this, the chances are you're growing your own vegetables. And if you're growing your own vegetables, you agree with Stephen, and you know, that it just makes no sense to go to a supermarket and buy it. Right. Well, a bit of time spent on this bed, my brassicas. So that's cauliflower Clapton on the left, cabbage Killerton in the middle, and broccoli Monclano on the right, all weeded, limed, put in, firmed down, all club root resistant varieties. So let's see how they get on. Thought I'd take a moment to show you the pond. There's lots of frog shenanigans going on in there. Every time I walk past there's a flurry of water movement as the frogs dive down, but it is looking particularly attractive at the moment. Very happy with it. Well, it takes a while, but I've got my sifter which fits over this wheelbarrow, and I go up to that pile of muck and I riddle it through the grid, and it takes a long time, but what I'm getting is beautiful. So I do a couple of wheelbarrow loads onto one of the beds, one of the low beds that I need to build up, and then I go and do something else, and I go back to it because I find it quite boring. In fact, quite a few of the jobs on the allotment are boring, but if you just stagger them and do a little bit and then go and do something else, then I find that breaks up the monotony of it, and it's lovely to see every aspect of the allotment improving. So this is really good stuff, and I'm really pleased that I'm taking the time to riddle it and get rid of all the rubbish and the stones and the bits of brick, and there's tin cans and plastic and God knows what else the farmer's got in it, but it's all coming out and it looks beautiful as the final product. Well, while my neighbour napalms his plot, I thought I'd give you a little look up mine. And I've riddled some of that manure to put in the planting holes of the squashes when I plant them. And I've weeded all, or hoed all the beds, so everything's looking neat and tidy now. I bang my head on that sign every time. Not sure how many of those raspberries will take. But right now, I'm on top of it. Well, that's it for another week. I've had a good final day up here. I managed to get quite a lot done. Planted some more brassicas. I've done a lot with the compost, riddled a lot of it, got rid of the muck out of it and spread it over a lot of the beds. Crikey, what have I been doing all day? A lot of hoeing. All the beds have been hoed, so that's a success story. I'm on top of the weeds, which is no mean feat on any allotment. So yeah, I've had a good week and a good day up here, and all being well, and next week looks like a cracking week. Dry all week, warm temperatures. It's been a good April. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to all the subscribers, and if you're not a subscriber, please consider it. But that aside, all being well, look after yourselves, and I shall see you again next week. Bye for now.